Mike, welcome aboard to the show. So happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me, Avi. It's a pleasure.
So you have a unique story, and I want to start from that. Um, Basically, and I'll keep it very short because I want to jump to the difficult question that you mentioned before. Um, you had a idea in your business. The CEO basically was not listening. You talked to other people. They were like, "Nope, don't do it." You decided to do it anyway. Now, here's my question. How do you, in retrospect, and maybe looking forward to advising other entrepreneurs, how do you differentiate between nobody's listening, nobody agrees with me, and I should still do it, and I'm going to be successful, like you clearly were, and you're actually doing something stupid, don't do it, you're going to waste time and money? Because the same recipe for your success seems like the recipe for failure as well. How do you differentiate the two?
That's a great question. Um, how do I discern that? I think it's the people I talk to. If I talk to business owners,
Hmm.
I would put more weight on their advice. If I'm talking to employees, nothing wrong with being an employee. I was one for a long time. Most people are. It's a little bit different. I had a passion for a product, and no part of me wanted to do it myself. I wanted my company that I was working for to build it. I designed it on my own time and money, and I wanted them to run with it. And they just weren't interested. So no part of me wanted to start a company. I call myself a reluctant entrepreneur because I'm like, okay, fine. And I just had a little tantrum. I was 32 years old then. I had a little 32-year-old tantrum. I grabbed my ball and my bat and I went home, and I complained to my wife about how unfair life is, and no one's listening to me. And she says, well, why don't you do it yourself? And I'm like, what? uh, oh, I don't want to run a business. But I had a passion for a product,
Right.
and no one was going to dissuade me from that. And the passion was bigger than the fear in that case. And I was blinded by the passion to launch my product, and that's what I did. And I had to do it myself, so that's what I did.
This is a really important point. Your wife basically said, "Go do it," right? But entrepreneurs in general, if you have a significant other, a family, you're not doing this alone. You're bringing the whole family into this quite difficult journey. You got that initial blessing, but what happened after that? Was she, on the journey with you the whole way, this angel of support, or was this a renegotiation as you moved forward through the tough times? What did that look like, and what would be your advice to entrepreneurs going down this journey with their families on how to kind of manage that aspect of it? Because I can tell you I fucked that up a few times and learned a few things on my side.
Well, when my wife encouraged me to do it, it was more like, well, why not? And
Sure.
I could have come up with 200 reasons why not that were all valid, but I wasn't thinking about that. I'm sure there were many times it's now 33 years the company's been around. There were many times, particularly in the first 10 years, that I'm sure she regretted that bit of advice. There had to be a lot of renegotiations. Fortunately, she was pretty distracted because she was the one with a real job, a paycheck. And when I quit and started my own company, I had no salary. So we were hand to mouth for a long time. But we had just enough to pay our mortgage and to feed our child and us, and nothing else extra. So she definitely sacrificed a lot. But she just kept her mind at keeping her job and keeping the income coming in, so that we didn't starve. Then there was a time when she came into the business and eventually left her job and then came into the business, and that was an experience. And depending on who tells the story, I either fired her or she stormed out and quit. Both are true.
I
And
gotta
I
stop you
realized
there. We can't not lean into that story. So, by the way, that saying of like, "Oh, my wife and I'll tell the story, and I'm not sure who's right," I say that a lot.
yeah, well, we're both right and we're both wrong.
Exactly. But let me ask you this:
yeah.
Were you hesitant because for me, I'm thinking like, oh, bringing like now we're both have this risk, the business. If it goes wrong, it's going to affect both of us. There's no fail safe. Were you hesitant in bringing your wife into the business?
No, I was excited to bring her into the business.
Why? Why was that? Tell me more.
Well, I thought she would, because she was my wife, my partner, and we've been married for a lot of years, that she would do anything I asked her to do. And it turned out I was completely wrong. I could not have been more wrong. I would ask her to, call the customer and say that, the equipment's going to be late. And she would look at me and go, "What's wrong with you? I'm not going to do that. You do that." And I realized that, okay, she's the same at home as she is at the office. And yeah, it was, and I abused her. I asked her to kind of do all the things I didn't want to do. And she wasn't going to have that. But she did bring an awful lot of structure to the business, because I'm a very conceptual person, and entrepreneurial and conceptual people are the worst managers in the world. Anyone who's ever worked for me would tell you they hate to work with me. And that's because we're always interested in the next big thing. We're always distracted by the shiny object in the corner. And I was like a serial arsonist, only instead of fires, I was starting projects. And I didn't have the desire to really complete them. As soon as I got bored, I went on to something else. And that's a terrible way to run a business, but that's the way most entrepreneurs are. We're terrible managers. We're the visionaries. We're the future. We sit up in the crow's nest and look over the horizon, and everyone else has to figure out how to make our grand plans come to fruition. And she was an organizer, and I wasn't interested in that. And that frustrated her, and it frustrated everyone around me. And the difference was she could be honest with me, and she could tell me what she thought, and she did. And my staff would be cautious about what they said. And it would be a little bit of the emperor's new clothes. They'd tell me what I wanted to hear, not what I needed to hear. So she brought in a kind of a breath of fresh air, whether I liked it or not.
Yeah. I was at a situation where everybody was telling me what I wanted to hear. My wife was saying, "No, he's not going to join. Right? There's no way." And she said, "Look at his situation. Look at his mortgage. Look at his. He's going to get married. All this. He's not going to join you, no matter what he says." And I was like he's saying it. Other people are saying, "What are you talking about?" And then ultimately, she was right. It had to. It kind of shuffled the way I saw this problem of that the people that truly care for you, your family, and not even always, will tell you uncomfortable truths. The people
Yeah.
that work for you, not necessarily. They're going to tell you what you want to hear. Have you been able to figure out a method or a strategy or a culture to overcome that problem with your business over 30 plus years?
Yeah, the closest people on my team, kind of my executive team that run the company, I'm semi-retired from it. I own it, but they pay me very well to stay away, which is a great investment for them. But the team that runs my company, they know me. They've worked with me for a lot of years, and they can be straight with me, and they are straight with me, and they know it's safe. I may not like what I hear, but I never shoot a messenger. I never have. Just people don't know that until they know that, and no one wants to take a chance on that. But my team
Is it as
is great.
simple as that? Just not shooting the messenger? Is that the mistake that people make, to which people don't tell them the truth? Is it just how they respond when somebody tries that? Or have you kind of implemented more than that cultural wise?
Well, I think that's the start, but there has to be more than that. I mean, the fact that they could say something and then I just don't listen and don't fire them and don't yell is not much better. I had to learn, and this was a long journey, Ari, a long journey. I had to learn how to make the proper decisions. And I was making a lot of fear-based decisions. And Jim Collins, in his book Good to Great, said that good is the enemy of great.
Right.
And we were doing good, and we were never going to do great, because I didn't want to risk the safety and the consistency of good for the risk of trying to be great. And sometimes, you just have to take fear off the table. And how do you do that? What I was told by a mentor, kind of a business coach, I called her Yoda, although she never appreciated that, but she was very Yoda-esque. And the advice she would give me would make no sense. It was totally counterintuitive, but it was totally right. And one of the things she told me is, I'm trying to decide whether to go left or right. And she goes, "Well, what way do you want to go?" I thought, "Well, I want to go left." then why don't you go left? I said, well, I don't have the time or the money. She said, what if you had all the time and all the money? Which way would you go? I said, well, I'd go left. She goes, that's the right decision. That's the right decision. And once I concluded that was the right decision, whatever it was, then I found the time and the money. But as long as I was waffling, as long as I was letting fear get in my way, I couldn't even come to the decision it was the right decision. And then without me being committed to that, there's no way the money and the time would come. You kind of manifest that without sounding spooky and new agey. I don't mean to sound that way, but it's not even going to start coming until you make the decision that this is the right decision, whatever that may be. And that applies to so many different things. And I didn't believe it. It's important to me to understand how things work. I'm very analytical that way. I need to understand cause and effect. And I couldn't. So I've come to embrace that theory of taking fear off the table because it has worked. And the fact that it always has worked, the process works, I trust the process, and that is analytical enough for me. Does that make sense?
So there is social psychology research that has proven what you're saying. It's not voodoo.
Right.
One of the most prominent theories this is proven social psychology, is called the Pygmalion effect. So what you called like I don't know, summoning it or bringing it to you, they've described how that psychology happens in Pygmalion effect. And really one of the examples that I gave is that I had this employee thought he was going to be fired, completely untrue. But because he thought that was going to happen, he started behaving a little dodgy.
Sure.
And then we saw that and we were like, oh, well, is everything okay? And are you okay? And then he thought, oh, there it is. They're going to fire me. So it's just created this snowball.
Yeah.
And conversely, if you're like, oh, I'm going to take a right, I don't have the money, but that's what I want to do. Well, I'm going to raise money from investors. So you've made this conscious decision of this is where you're going. So I don't think that sounds like voodoo at all. And I think there's social psychology to prove it. I think it's one of the least known psychologies that have such a huge effect on our life. So I really appreciate your point. When you talk about decision making, you talk about proper decisions. Have you been able, beyond this idea of taking the fear off the table, have you been able to create a structure or a process or a thought mechanism of how to make proper decisions in business?
Well, besides taking fear and money off the table, I don't know. That's difficult. I don't have a formula, or if I do, I'm not aware of the formula. I look at, it's changed over the years. My goal used to be grow, sell, bring more products out, even if we weren't the best, even if it was an also ran. Bring everything to the table, a jack of all trades, master of none kind of mentality. And I thought the solution to every problem was to just grow my way out of it. Little did I know I was growing my problems too. But then I came to the realization after a lot of years that one should, if you're going to sell a product that you can claim legitimately that it's the best in class. Don't be an also ran. The fact that my competitors might sell products I don't sell, it's okay. That's no problem. Let them do it. God love them. Go forth. And when I came to that realization, it made decision making very easy because I asked myself, is this something that we should be doing? Does it serve our industry? Does it serve our customers? And is it the best in class? Can we do this better than anybody? And if the answer to any of those is no, then yeah, I could go forth and I could make money at it, but it's going to distract from everything else. And I only have so much bandwidth. And it's okay to be smaller. It's okay to be a niche business if that's what you're in. And I had to bargain with my ego a lot over that. And because my ego wanted me to be into everything and, be a big Fortune 500 or Fortune 50 within our space, the electronics industry. And once the ego got out of the way, then I was okay with just doing really well at the few things we do. And that made every decision a lot easier when I didn't have to base that decision on my ego.
It's really easy to make a decision to cut a product line if you're losing money, you failed, like you're at the end of the journey and you're like, okay, like this didn't work out. But making that decision up front is incredibly difficult, right? Because you don't know the outcomes. What are the parameters that went into it? What were you looking at to say, are we best in class? Is there a future in this product line?
Well, we look at all the other similar type products or products that perform a similar function, and we take a critical look at them and see what they're doing right and what we think they're failing at. And the other factor for me anyway is, can we do really well at this product? So one of the, I think, the enemies of our in our growth strategy when we were doing that was we could make money selling a widget, but that takes up capacity. It takes employees, it takes real estate, it takes more of our factory floor. And I wouldn't want to give it up because we were making money at it. It wasn't the best in class, but it was good enough. And customers were not angry about it. They weren't thrilled, but they weren't angry about it. But what could we be doing with that extra time, with that extra money, with that extra factory space and personnel that could fulfill the commitment to be best in class? And so when I kind of woke up one day and realized we were near the end, we were out of money, totally out of money. And I realized I didn't even have enough cash to fulfill an order if someone called. And that's when I started thinking, okay, what do we do well? What makes us the most money? Because it's the best in class. And how can we do more like that? And I fired a whole bunch of products that were fine. They were making us money. Just they weren't great. And the products weren't great. And the revenue from the profit, I should say, from the products wasn't great. So I fired products and we just concentrated on best in class, highest quality, most value to our customers. And we defined who we wanted our customer to be, which wasn't everybody. We fired customers as well. I was like Donald Trump back on The Apprentice. And that's the only time I'll say I was like Donald Trump. It was back on The Apprentice. And, I was just like, you're fired. But it was not so much people. It was certain customers and certain payment terms and certain products and certain marketing strategies. I got rid of all those things and went to a very organic, very authentic strategy on our products, our marketing, our people, our customers. And when we did that, when we stopped leading on price and being claiming to be the best when we weren't, when we switched from that, we started attracting a completely different type of customer. Customers that didn't lead with price, customers that led with, I have a problem I need solved. How can you help us solve it? And when those customers have a problem with their equipment, for example, they partner with us on a solution. They don't just call and scream at us. They are high-class customers, super valuable. And we think these people are more like partners with us. We're in business to support them, and they're in business to financially enable us to support them and all the other customers. So it worked out to be more of a partnership. And I may have strayed off track to your question, but that's what entrepreneurs do.
It's a lot of important points. I mean, you started from really two critical issues that they're honestly pain points for me that I talk about a lot. And this idea of understanding your competitive landscape. If you don't understand what the competitive landscape, you can't even understand if you didn't use these words, but I call it if you have a 10x product, right? You called it a best in class. I call it, is what you're doing way better than everybody else? Are you differentiated or not? So I think that starting point is incredibly, incredibly important. But it's much more than that, because the pains that kind of eat at your bottom line as opposed to revenue are hidden. When you had all these products that weren't 10x, right, or weren't best in class to your words, the things that kind of were killing you are hard to see. What were they and why did they happen? Because if you kind of look at it, it's like, oh, we were making money. If you're making money, why aren't you making money? That's kind of a contradiction there. How is that happening?
Well, there's every new business owner, unless they've already been in business before, will learn that there's a difference big difference between revenue and profit, and there's a big difference between gross profit and net profit, and there's a big difference to after-tax profit. It's basically take most of the money and make it go away. And I didn't realize that. I was not savvy with financial sheets. I thought everything lived on the income statement and it ended there. And even the top half of the income statement mostly. And I didn't know what a balance sheet was. I didn't know what cash flow projections were, and all of that. And I simply chased revenue. And the thing about less than best-in-class products is it can't command the payment terms, the pricing structure that 20 other companies sell the same thing offer. And if we have products that are truly unique, that are recognized by the industry, not by us solo, but by the industry as best in class, 10x, as you say, then they approach us differently. They don't approach us as if we're a commodity. They approach us as if we're a solution to a problem, and they don't question too many things, because over the years, we've established a reputation in our industry, and part of that reputation is the way we sell. I learned that this is part of my Yoda experience. I learned that the best way to sell your product is to not talk about your product. We don't talk about our product. We switched years ago, about 12 years ago, from a obnoxious, braggadocious advertising strategy where we were the best and everyone else sucked, and it was quite that literal, to an education strategy. All we do is create value-based content for our industry. We talk about the problems that our products solve, but we don't say they solve them. We don't talk about our products.
But Mike, you reach out to any company in the industry, 9 out of 10 times, you're going to get a demo of their software and they're going to talk about features.
Yep.
I mean, how does that reconcile? And I'll tell you that I'm on your side on this. I agree. I think that that's a terrible way to sell. But how do we reconcile, at least you and I agreeing that you need to talk about the problem, you need to solve the problem and talk about the process and not features? Why do we still have that sales process disconnect across the industry, across different industries even? You're in Keep Me Honest, electronics. I've been involved in security. I've been involved in media. I've been involved in manufacturing. Like, it seems like we have this problem all over the place.
Yeah, I think manufacturers, companies in general, have not woken up to the fact of the generation we're living in now. My generation, and perhaps yours, grew up, largely before the internet. At least me. I'm not going to say you did. I grew up before the internet. I started my company before the internet. I started my company in 1992. The internet wasn't really anything useful until at least 96.
I was 10, by the way.
You were 10, so you were there 10. Too. But so if we wanted the industry to know who we were, we had to advertise in magazines. And there was no email back then, so we had to mail brochures, and we had sales reps with brochures in their trunks who would drop them off, and all of that. And over the last 30 plus years, the world has changed. Our phones don't ring off the hook until someone is ready or very close to placing an order. Why? Because they do their own research. The younger generation, millennials, Gen Zers, whatever new ones are called, they do their own homework. They don't see ads. They can see them, but like a spam filter in an email platform, it doesn't get into their brain. They have a block, and they don't believe words on a screen or on a piece of paper. They need to learn themselves. And I'm guilty of coining phrases, which then I find out have already been coined by others. So forgive me. This is a Mike Konrad phrase, but I don't think it really was. I called it guided discovery. Our equipment, the products we sell, solve a very specific problem within the electronic manufacturing industry. It's a problem that engineers know they have, but they don't know what causes the problem. So if we talk about the size of our pumps, the cubic feet per minute of our blowers, the wattage of our heaters, the speed of our computer, I might as well be speaking Greek. to an Australian.
Right.
It will not land anywhere. They have no place to put it. They can't process it. However, if I talk about the problem they're having, light bulb, all of a sudden I got their attention. If I talk about the cause of the problem and the best practice remedies for that problem without talking about what I do, all of a sudden they go, yeah, that makes sense. And then they do some research and they determine that's it. It is X problem. How do I solve X problem? I'm gonna call the guy that told me about the X problem. He seems to understand. And that's generally us or whoever else does that.
Right.
And that's guided discovery. We guide them with facts and data for they to discover the solution. If we just talk about the solution and they don't understand that what their problem is, we're just spitting into the wind. And the second concept that I created in my head, which had already been called by someone else, is conscious marketing. And conscious marketing is what Nike does, for example. Everyone's familiar with a Nike shoe commercial. Tell me the last time Nike's talked about their tread designs and their comfort and their laces and their style and their performance and their durability. They don't. Half the time they don't even show a shoe. They show Michael Jordan in the air, or they show a tubby little kid, 13 years old, running to try and lose a little bit of weight because he wants to be a great athlete. They connect emotionally and subconsciously to the customer. They make a connection. And one thing I've learned is that younger generations don't buy products. They join tribes. Look at Apple. A little different now, but generally Apple. People will camp in stupid little tents, for a week, waiting for the latest generation of the phone that didn't change much from the last generation.
Right.
And Patagonia and Nike and countless other brands where the brand is big and they don't even talk about their products. And when someone joins a tribe, when they choose your company because they determined through their research that you helped them with, that you're the right solution for their problem, they fall on their sword for your company. They'll wear your swag. Yeah, we don't really provide swag, but if we did, someone would wear it because they love our company, and our customers love us. They truly, I mean, they really admire our company. A, because we didn't make them look bad. B, we solved the problem, which made them look really good. And C, we didn't come across pushy or obnoxious or arrogant or blah, blah, blah. Our customers are all engineers and scientists, and they think a certain way. We're playing in their sandbox. They're not playing in our marketing world.
So
it works.
There's two things. One that I love, one that I absolutely hate, and one makes me want to scream. If you give, and I was part of this experiment, you give basically a whole class, 40 people, Pepsi, RC, and Coca-Cola, 3 cups, and you have 40 times 3 cups, and then each person comes up, and all they need to say is what is what? What is Coke? What is Pepsi? What is RC? You would think, well, anybody you ask, is there a difference for you? Do you prefer Coke or Pepsi? Is it all the same? Every single person in that class said, I know what I like. Like, there is no way I will tell you RC is actually Coca-Cola. No way in hell. And yet, when we did the experiment, there was an equal 33, 33, 33 distribution. Means nobody knew shit. Maybe some people were better, but other people were much worse. Meaning it was completely... So to me, that says marketing works, brands work. But on the other hand, I want to scream because there's no differentiation between the products.
Right, but check this out. Coca-Cola doesn't... I mean, they might say refreshing. That's the closest adjective to their, as they describe the taste of their product, refreshing. Well, what does that mean? They identify with the holidays. They identify with Christmas.
Freedom.
They kind of created the current version of Santa Claus as we know it now. They were very influential in that. And why do you think the Santa Claus is in a red outfit?
Red, that's right.
It could have been any outfit. If Pepsi had invented that campaign, then Santa Claus would be dressed in blue.
But this is hard to believe. I mean, for the audience that isn't at least my age, they don't remember that, prior to those Coke ads, Santa Claus came in a variety of shapes and forms and colors. And when you see those old documents, you're like, wait, how is this even possible? It's impossible for us to understand that Coca-Cola's ads had that impact. We believe it's always been this way.
Yeah, well,
it's
Santa
ridiculous.
Claus also, before Coca-Cola came out in the 30s, with that campaign, Santa Claus in many artist renditions looked more like a pedophile. You would not want your child to go anywhere near him. It looked like some homeless guy in the street, and because he was crafted after St. Nicholas, and not a handsome character. But when Coke said, we want to identify the holidays, and the only reason they did that is because people weren't buying Coke when it was cold. They were buying Coke when it was hot. They wanted to get more seasonality, so they hired an artist to come up with a rendition of a jolly fat Santa who you would send your kids easily to, and they changed the whole perception of Santa. And they never talked about, other than saying refreshing and having Santa hold a cold glass with a little condensation coming down the outside, so you knew it was cold. That was it. They sell product by having people join their tribe. And there are tribes of Coca-Cola people, just as there are tribes of Pepsi people. And I'm not sure RC has any tribe at all, but at any rate. But for the record, I would tell the difference. I guarantee you, someday if I ever meet you, we'll do a little test, and I'll prove that at least one person
to the test.
Yeah.
I was certain myself I failed. It just didn't work. So I'll warn you.
You never know.
It's amazing. I'm quite a student of social psychology, and it teaches us of all the things we think we know, but we have no freaking idea.
Right.
So
a lot of it's contextual. When someone says, when you order a Coke and then they say the obligatory is Pepsi okay?
Yeah.
You're now conditioned.
Yes.
To not like it as much.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I bet you that if you gave somebody a Coke after saying, is Pepsi okay, they'll be like, this isn't so good.
Not as good as Coke. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure there's a lot of subliminal and things like that, inputs that are already pre-programming your response.
Mike, this has been, we were way over time. So I've had so much fun. I feel bad cutting us off here, but there is one question that I ask every single guest. And it's a hard one because it's a private or personal one at that. Mm-hmm. If you had to go back to 20-something-year-old Mike, what would you advise him? And this can be anything, personal, professional, family, anything.
Quite candidly, I would be hesitant to advise him on anything. And the reason is I made a lot of mistakes. I burned through a lot of money. I made stupid mistakes. And I learned from all of them. And I think if I told myself, a little bit of the future and gave myself some advice, I would have been robbed of the experience of falling down. And not just that, but the experience in getting back up. And I would rather work with someone who has failed in business than someone that has 10 home runs in a row. Because I can sit at a roulette table in Vegas and win 10 hands in a row. And does that mean I'm good or I'm just lucky? But if I fail at something, unless I'm just a total idiot and just a constant, perpetual failure, not too many of those out there. If I fail at something and I learn from it, that's more valuable than not having a failure, because it can happen anytime. You can run out of luck. And so I think I would, at least in terms of business, I would give myself stock tips, but that I'd have no problem doing. But I would not give myself any advice, because I hated the lessons I learned in real time.
Yes.
But I so value them today.
That's so meaningful and so valuable, because learning through our experience and truly learning from our mistakes, that is such a powerful message. I truly, truly appreciate that. Mike, this has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for joining our show today.
Thank you for inviting me. The pleasure's all mine.